A warm welcome to the 13th episode of the Mental Takedown. I can't believe I've already made it through a baker's dozen of these. Welcome back. This time it's Lehigh's 125-pounder, Brandon Paetzell. He is a 2020 first team NWCA All-American, 2020 Scholar All-American, has a bunch of accomplishments from high school in Phillipsburg, and also is my personal choice to win the 2021 NCAA National Champion at 125 pounds. This episode, probably more than any other, has the most kind of psychological nuances and psychological stories that I think are kind of such important, and I didn't even realize really, I think, how big psychology was, even at the high school level nowadays in modern day sports. Enough talk on this one. I have some huge announcements to make, so stick around for the outro of this episode. I have some huge announcements. Without further ado, enough of me, roll the clip.
Joining me now is Lehigh's 125-pound senior, and the guy who independently is going to make me the biggest wrestling prophet in the world, because I ruffled a few feathers this week, and of course, just a couple days later, he's on the show, the one and only Brandon Paetzell, which, against popular belief and, let's say, common opinion, I have chosen him to win the national title, and we shall see what happens in 7 months' time. How are you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the bold prediction.
Well, how many people, or we won't get into that because I'm going to start
It's
on
a different topic for a different day.
Before we even start. Exactly. So I guess before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty stuff, I guess, how have you been since kind of the whole season world wrestling fell apart in a matter of 48 hours?
Yeah, the initial news was pretty devastating, obviously, especially I felt like I was in a good spot in the bracket, and I was just really ready to go, to be honest with you. So, that was definitely a tough way to end the season for me. But, I quickly realized that, like, there was a lot of people going through the same thing, and obviously, like, a lot of people going through a lot worse with the virus and everything. So, I just tried to keep it in perspective. But, honestly, yeah, the first month after the season, like, the whole month of April was really tough to get through for me. But once I got through that, I've been doing a lot better. And, I got back on the mat after a little bit of time off, and I've just been grinding and getting ready for next year, trying to do everything I can to make this last go around the best one. So
I guess emotionally, when do we kind of begin to shift from reflecting on last season and kind of pushing forward to next season? And was it kind of after the first month, you just, whatever, bygones are bygones?
Yeah, I think those types of things take time to heal. It's almost like a breakup. For a while you're just reflecting on it and you're thinking about it the whole time, but then after a little while, you start to be able to move forward. So as much as I wanted to think about, getting ready for my last year, it was I just needed to hurt for a little bit, to be honest, and just get that hurt out of my system. And then I was able to finally, like, really refocus and put all my effort into getting ready for this last year. So.
And is that something that you try to do often, just kind of being honest with yourself and knowing that, it's going to be a long process in order to whatever you deal with, whether it be this virus or, whatever happens, because sometimes crap hits the fan and, we got to deal with it.
Yeah, no doubt. I think I've gone through a lot of adversity in my high school career. So, with injuries, that kind of prepared me a little bit. And, I know that the only way to kind of move forward is to let the emotions come. If you kind of just try to ignore it and, like, bottle it up, that doesn't really help solve the problem. You kind of just have to, like, accept it and be, like you said, be honest with yourself. And then when you do that, I think that you're going to be able to move forward in a positive way.
I guess what are the psychological differences then when dealing with something like a virus then compared to like maybe something that only you personally are going through, maybe like an injury or, you know, whatever else you've been through throughout your career?
Well, I think the first difference is that obviously you can't, control like a phrase in wrestling that a lot of people say is control what you can control, right? So injuries you can't control either, but at least that's something that you are expecting. Like, everybody gets hurt at some point in their career. So that's something that's expected. You expect to get hurt, you expect to take losses, you expect those types of things to happen. But, a worldwide pandemic, you don't really expect that to be the thing that kind of takes your season away. So that was definitely something. It was a different kind of heartbreak, but it was the same kind of principle. Like, you just have to deal with it and accept it and then move forward in a positive way. But so I think also it helps that, it's like you said, it's not just me dealing with it. So that helped me keep it in perspective. I think, realizing that there was a lot of people out there that, like people are losing their lives out there. So I may have lost the season, and that was definitely painful for me, but it's not as painful as somebody losing like their loved ones, so.
I guess throughout a season, how much do you bank into preparation and kind of a curveball? Is prophylactic thinking good in wrestling? I've had mixed answers on this question.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Well, preparation just being kind of preparing for a match, which most of the people I've had on the show have said that it's a very good idea. But when I talk about prophylactic thinking, which is kind of preparing for different scenarios before they happen, is that something that you do, or?
In terms of like opponents, or?
In terms
or just in general?
Well, both opponents and certain situations. Like, do you think about before the match, in the third period, if I'm down such and such, or?
Okay, yeah. So I think your general preparation from your training is going to be the main driver in your success, in my opinion. But I think that they're kind of one and the same in a sense. Not entirely, but at least to an extent, So what I mean by that is, in your training, you have to prepare for match type of scenarios. So in our training, like a lot of times we'll do situations where there's short time on the clock and you need a takedown, or you're winning by one and, you have a stall call, so you can't give up a takedown or a stall, those types of situations. And obviously when you work on those things in the room, I think that helps you, they come out and, in the big match setting. So.
And also, I guess
that makes sense.
yeah. I guess as you wrestle throughout the progression of a match, do you notice when the opponent is kind of playing psychology, kind of mind games almost in a way with you?
Actually, I've only had like one instance where that happened to me in a match, but generally I would say, for the large majority of opponents, like they're just focused on the match, on doing what they're doing, and I'm focused on doing what I'm doing. So I would say no, probably, but that's in my experience. I don't know. You might get a different answer if you ask somebody else. So
all I'll say is you can scroll through Brandon's opponent list, and it doesn't take that many brain cells to figure out which one it is, but we'll leave that one at that. I guess obviously throughout the season there are ups and downs, peaks and valleys and whatnot.
Yeah.
How does kind of the experience of a coaching staff, like how do they deal with keeping everybody in check and not getting too high on a high, too low on a low, and kind of keeping you guys there even when maybe you guys don't want to be?
Yeah, it's really important, honestly, and our coaching staff does a great job of it. You know, a lot of it's just like the things they tell us, and I think a big focus for us last year was just getting better every day. You know, just focusing on doing the little things right, because when you do the little things right every day, they add up, and then they become big things eventually. You know, and then also just focusing on just preparing for March. You know, and once again by doing the little things right and by getting better every day, we are preparing for March, but you know, in by keeping our focus on March, like, which is really all that matters in wrestling, you know, that helps us keep things in perspective. So even if we do have a big win, we're like, hey, you know, we didn't win a national title yet. We didn't get on the podium or win a team trophy yet. So, and then if we take a loss, obviously it's like, hey, we can still achieve that goal, you know?
And structurally, is that a good thing for wrestlers? Do you enjoy the fact that all the pressure is kind of built up on 3 days, give or take?
I love it. You know, it sucks that it got taken away from us this year, but I mean, you know, I've watched the Nationals for years and years, probably, I mean, over a decade for sure, you know. And so you know, I had the opportunity to wrestle there 2 years ago, and I didn't get on the podium, but you know, just to wrestle in that atmosphere and feel the fans and the crowd and the pressure and just everything about it was an incredible experience. So I'm really looking forward to going back there next year. But you know, I do think that it kind of stinks that you're judged by those 3 days because, you know, you could do a lot of great things in your career, right? But if you don't reach your potential in March, then people judge you just on those 3 days. They don't judge you on what you did before that. So that's kind of the bad thing about it. But I think it also makes for like a really awesome end of the season, you know, a really great climax to the season.
And I guess well, you're first team All American this year. How does that kind of was the anticlimactic end of the season? How does that, like,
Yeah.
it's there, but psychologically, what different, feelings do you have on kind of how the season ended compared to if it was
Yeah.
Minneapolis?
It was kind of, I had mixed feelings at first about it, you know. Initially when the season ended, I was just clinging on to, like, I really hope they, you know, grant us another year of eligibility. Then they said that wasn't happening. So I was like, all right, what's the next best thing for me would be if they gave, you know, All-American status to the top 8 seeds. And then that's what they did. So when they did that, I was like pretty happy, you know, just to get recognized for my hard work and for, you know, the season that I had, you know, that was pretty nice. But shortly afterwards, it wasn't like a super high, you know, it was like a small victory, I guess you could say. But shortly after that, I kind of, like I said, I went into like a little bit of depression in April because I was like, you know, this is not even close to the same thing as if I had won in the blood round or if I, you know, won in the quarterfinals, and then, you know, you're on the podium, and that feeling can't be replicated, you know, with like a handout type of thing. So it's nice, but it's extremely bittersweet, and, you know, definitely isn't the same. So.
I guess now that you're going into your final year and looking back on everything you've kind of been through, what, especially the transfer and everything, and how have you kind of evolved in the way that you just think about the sport that's kind of different than maybe when you first started?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, it's been, you know, I always loved the sport of wrestling. And then as I got into high school, I still loved it, but my focus shifted to just being a state champ. And so, you know, I didn't lose the joy necessarily, but I started to put too much pressure on myself to win everything, you know? So the focus became on winning and losing. And then that carried into like my first year or two of college. And then it wasn't until my redshirt sophomore year where I was wrestling for Lehigh at 133, that I started to like just enjoy what I was doing. You know, I kind of like refound my love for the sport. And, you know, I just was really enjoying training and competing and just really focusing on getting better every day. Like I said, that was our kind of our phrase for a while. So still is, you know, but so I kind of switched my mindset from focusing on just the outcome and just, you know, winning and losing to just enjoying like what I was doing, and my passion for the sport. So that's the biggest thing I think that's changed for me in the last couple of years. And like, I think you could see in my wrestling when I don't put that pressure on myself that I'm having like a lot more success because I'm just enjoying what I'm doing, you know?
And, I'm just curious, is that kind of a product of overthinking things? Because I was listening and a very famous former tennis player was saying that like at one point in his career, like he was thinking about whether an apple was good for his nutrition and whether like these vitamins would help him, increase whatever. And, he didn't want to never wanted to go to the movies because, he was
Yeah.
always over stressed out. Was that kind of something that you kind of slowly, just, it doesn't happen overnight, but slowly kind of, we just
Yeah.
unconsciously get ourselves into those kinds of situations and before we know it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I became obsessed with, that one goal of being a state champ. And, I wouldn't let myself like go out or have any fun or hang out with friends that much. I was kind of just like, it was only training and only wrestling and nutrition or whatever else, So I think I found more of a balance in college in these last like 2 or 3 years. And that's made it a lot more enjoyable, but also just the like I said, the switch in the mindset of just thinking about just having fun and truly enjoying what I'm doing as opposed to just, putting too much pressure on myself. And actually kind of like you said, overthinking, that reminds me of a little thing my sports psychologist told me about, which was, he talks about like a baseball player, right? Hitting a pitch. And if you think about don't strike out, don't strike out, don't strike out, you're going to strike out. But if you think about looking at the seam on the ball and you really focus and hone in on your technique and on the process, you're going to get a home run. So that's another switch that I made as well.
Is that provided by Lehigh, or is that something that you consciously?
No, that was actually the sports psychologist that I worked with in high school. But he had a big part to play in me actually ending up at Lehigh. So.
Okay, I guess on the transfer, since coming to Lehigh, Lehigh has had some very good 125 pounders, and from what I read, you and Darian get along quite well. I guess, how is having that kind of figure outside of the coaching staff? I know Darian, is he part of the coaching staff officially now? He basically
He was, yeah.
Pretty much, right?
He's my coach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you know how those things go. They always go back to their alma mater and help out and do whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I guess having that kind of figure outside of your head coach or something, how has that, changed or helped you?
It's awesome, especially because I grew up in the Lehigh Valley, so I've known Darian for years, and we were kind of like acquaintances. We weren't super close, but we knew of each other, and we wrestled every once in a while. And he was like always the best at whatever age level he was, So I kind of always looked up to him, and then especially when he was at Lehigh, and I was really just I looked up to him, So once I got here, he was one of the first people to reach out to me and support me and take me under his wing and make me feel at home. And, that meant a lot to me. And, we have a super close relationship to this day. And he just really helps me with my mindset and believing that I can do it. He's always telling me that I can win, the national title and everything. So, and then obviously I just, training with a guy of his caliber, like he's so technically sound and he's got so many tricks, and I just learn so much every time I wrestle him. So it's really awesome having him in the room.
Okay. Forgive me for this next question, but I have to ask it. How often does he bring up the time y'all wrestled in college?
It's funny, he's so humble that he's actually not the one that he never talks about it. I'm the one that brings it up. So it'll be funny. Like, I remember specifically, this was like last year or the year before, I forget, but we were wrestling in the room and he hit me with like a cement mixer and put me on my back. And that was exactly what he hit me with in our match at Grace Hall. And I was like, oh man, like you're giving me flashbacks to the match we had and stuff, so it's kind of funny. We still joke about that to this day once in a while. So.
All right. Well, I guess in this day and age and kind of the world we live in, I guess, you are, say, active on social media.
Yeah.
And it's a part of all of our lives. And I guess, how does that integrate, good or bad, into kind of wrestling and achieving your goals or even helping you achieve your goals?
Mm. I think you have to be careful. You know, I'm well educated and I've matured a lot, so I know what to look at and what not to look at, what to take to heart and what not to take to heart. I think you got to be careful though when you're a younger kid. If you're looking at the wrong stuff or if you see people saying things about you, you know that can be a dagger to the heart in a sense. You know, so I think you have to be careful when you're younger. But for me personally, like at this point, I really don't. Um, I don't really care if people say bad things about me. Like people say bad things about everyone on social media. And, you know, sometimes I can use that to drive me as well. But I really enjoy having, you know, a great support system on Twitter and Instagram and whatever else. You know, people always hitting me up and telling me good job or good luck or, you know, whatever else, and keep your head up even, you know, so I love having that support system.
Tell me about it. It's a fine line, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess interestingly enough, you were a decent sized recruit out of high school, but you know,
Mhm.
nobody expected you to kind of tear the world on fire immediately. And objectively, I think you'd agree that you certainly didn't. But there's a quote that I love. It says, geniuses are made, not born." I guess over time, as you've gotten more success, when you reflect on things and your experiences, how often do you kind of think back and reflect to when maybe you weren't quite as good as you are now?
That's a deep question. Yeah, I think back a lot. You know, I reflect a lot. It's been a really crazy and long journey, and I've loved every second of it. Mostly, you know, aside from the injuries and stuff like that, those types of things. But you know, it's been awesome. So I definitely like to reflect and think back on experiences. You know, camps and tournaments, and you know, just meeting a lot of people and things like that. But yeah, so you know, I feel like I always believed in my abilities, like that I had a special gift that I was able to like pick up on things and that I was really good on my feet. I've always been really good on my feet. So I've always kind of believed in that. But for me, it was kind of like a maturity thing and just, I was always a step behind, whether it was physically or mentally or, you know, whatever it was, I was always like a step behind. So I think that's why I kind of had a little bit of a breakthrough last year, because it just took me an extra couple of years to like get where I needed to be. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Now, speaking of which, you are, I wouldn't say well known, but you do very, very well with your exuberant celebrations when, especially at Grace Hall.
Love it.
Um, is that something you just kind of naturally grown into doing, and you know, and also I guess tactically being the 125 pounder, is that also kind of to kind of build height, because let's be honest, the crowd can be the biggest 12th man, or not in
Exactly.
wrestling, but
11th.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You know, I've always been, I'm a humble guy, you know, so I never was big on celebrations. I never celebrated before, maybe a little bit in high school, but very rarely, you know, and so I think just, you know, I don't know, man, I'm super passionate about it, like I said. So I think kind of like regaining that flame and that fire and, you know, the love of competing and just the joy of competing and being in that environment, it just fires me up, you know, so sometimes I get a little carried away, but I don't think I do anything over the top, you know, cocky or arrogant. I just, you know, I just like to, like you said, fire the crowd up. That's a really big thing for me, especially being the 25 pounder. You know, I really want to get the Lehigh fans and especially my teammates too, because I really want to get them fired up and get them ready to go as well. So if I get a big win and I'm all fired up, then that makes the next guy ready to go and he's fired up too, you know. So that's kind of my thought process there.
I guess also at those matches, and you know, the media covering the different sports, how have you learned to deal with the media over the years? Because I'll just be perfectly honest, like you seem so much more open and excited to talk to the media when I look at like when you were with Lehigh compared to like maybe your freshman year.
Yeah, it's just something that took a while to adjust to. You know, there was an adjustment period, and I wasn't used to it at all. Like in high school, you know, I had like one or two, you know, journalists that would come up to me, sports journalists that would come up to me and interview me after matches and stuff. So I was used to that, and that was like the biggest thing for me, you know. But it was never like, you know, video camera views, like big, especially when I got to Rutgers as well. Like I had, you know, the Big Ten camera crew and everything. So that was kind of an adjustment for me, but honestly, it was pretty nice to get that publicity a little bit, especially because wrestling's not that kind of sport where you're used to that type of thing. You know, it's not like football or something. So so it was a little bit of an adjustment, but it was enjoyable. And like you said, I'm definitely more open to it now, and I enjoy it. It's part of the process. So.
All right. As you've talked with me long enough and, you know, dealt with my strange questions long enough, I've been holding this question for the very end of the show. And
Let's hear
people
it.
that watch my show know that my last question is always kind of like a light one. You are a self-proclaimed foodie, so am I.
So much.
So, dream 3-course. I want to hear it.
Whew. Does it have to be? Do they have to go together?
I mean, it's your meal.
Like, are we talking like dinner? All right. Well, I'm gonna go appetizer would be pretzels, like pub style pretzels with beer cheese dip. All right. And then the entree would probably be like a pasta dish, like a carbonara or a chicken Alfredo or something like that. And then the dessert would be like some kind of like molten lava cake or like something like the equivalent of like a triple chocolate meltdown from Applebee's, that type of thing.
There we go. There we go. There we go. That's not happening during the season, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I've had too many of those in my recent quarantine time, so I need to step away from those a little bit.
All right. Well, thanks so much for putting up with me for half an hour.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
All right. You have a good one.
You too.
All right. Let's see if we can learn how to work this.
Ladies and gentlemen, many thanks for tuning in to the 13th episode of The Mental Takedown. Thank you so much, Brandon, for coming on and sharing all of his wonderful experiences and stories. And of course, very best of luck to you in the 2021 NCAA Collegiate Wrestling season. And go get that national championship. Literally, I've already called it. If you did enjoy that episode, please take a moment, let me know what you think down below. Subscribe, follow the Instagram, Twitter, whatever, all that normal influencer stuff that I get sick of saying at the end of every video. I do have one huge announcement, ladies and gentlemen. This past week on the 4th of August, Mr. Daniel Ward was kind enough to allow me to be a guest on his show, where I talked about how I was extremely concerned about the long-term prospects and health of not only Division I collegiate wrestling specifically, but also the health of wrestling in general. I'll link my appearance as well as all of Mr. Ward's stuff down below in the description. Please go ahead and check him out as well. I was supposed to be on for about 30 minutes. That turned into 50 minutes because as longtime listeners of the show, you realize that I love to talk. So there's much more. This is a very complicated issue. This is a can of worms that I don't think has been ignored, that I think has been ignored by the wrestling community for far too long. This is a very complicated issue, will take many hours to solve. So I am announcing a 7-part live stream video series starting next Tuesday, August 10th at 4 p.m. We'll have a show live on YouTube on this channel 2 times a week, every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, where I'll break down the prospects and the problems that are currently facing the wrestling community. If you do enjoy that kind of content and are interested in what I have to say, please do tune in. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.